What's good, y'all? My name is Kevin Kinnebrew, formerly known as DJ One Take, and what's been on my mind recently is fear. Now, not necessarily like fear itself or I'm afraid, but more so the concept of fear. And the reason being is because everything that I'm seeing on the news, everything that's going on, and even in conversation, like that seems to be the main topic, like whether people know it or not, or consciously or not, or thinking about it or not. A lot of times, the conversation is almost fear mongering, and it's funny because growing up, especially when I was a kid, is fear was defined as an acronym. Whenever I was afraid of things, my pops would be like, fear stands for false expectations seeming real. And when I was a kid, like, yeah, that makes sense. And even now, it still makes sense. When I was a kid, all of the stuff that I was afraid of was almost irrational. It was almost silly in a sense. As I go down the list, when I was 7 years old, 8 years old, what terrified me was getting my card flipped in class, which was to show your behavior. The Halloween episode of Zach and Cody, when they were around that table and calling on some kind of spirit, getting lost in the woods, because that was back when we would still go outside and play. That would be our term of, or our way of being adventurous. But I was still young, and I was always thinking worst case scenario. What really scared me was, I remember it so vividly, Ivan Ooze from the Power Rangers movie. I was afraid of Rancic, also a Power Rangers villain. He could pull a sword out of his knee or his leg. Terrified me. Mesagog from Power Rangers. And as I'm going through this and thinking about it, I'm starting to realize that a lot of the stuff that I was afraid of was on TV, and especially Power Rangers. So just thinking about all the stuff that when I was a kid, this is what I'm afraid of. And looking back, it makes sense. Like, fear isn't all bad. That's not what I'm trying to say. A lot of times, like, kids have to be taught what to be afraid of. I know me and my brothers, we used to get in laundry baskets and go down 2 flights of stairs and put like maybe 10 pillows and a few covers at the bottom to break our fall. And it's not like we need to be afraid of that, but we need to be afraid of what can come from that. Like, we were putting holes in the walls, we were doing all of this stuff. And we could have got injured, but when you're a kid, that's not what you're thinking about. So you have to have almost a healthy fear or a healthy caution of what can happen. That's why parents are like stranger danger, or when kids wander off when they're with their families, it's like you can't do that. And kids, especially me, I wasn't necessarily afraid of that, but all the stuff that I'm seeing on TV, I'm like, this can't be real, even though it's not. It felt like it was the end of the world because I'm seeing this villain fighting the Power Rangers and they're winning. Before I really go any further, I want to talk about what fear is versus what fear isn't, so we can properly define what we're talking about here. And kind of like what I said earlier, fear can be useful. You're building awareness of danger. That can be useful, so you know what to be looking out for, so you can judge if I go to this place, what's likely going to happen. Fear of sickness can be useful because it'll make you eat healthier. It'll make you work out. It'll make you do these things because you know what comes with sickness. And of course, fear of the Lord. Ecclesiastes 12:13, where it talks about how the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. So really defining what it is, and the textbook definition is a belief that something is dangerous or a threat. A lot of times fear is what comes up, but it's not the root emotion. The same way with anger, like it's always a projection, or it's always rooted in something else, like insecurity or even fear. Like it all comes down to what's at the core, but what comes up is either fear or anger. So fear isn't weakness, fear isn't anger, fear isn't some kind of intuition, but it's different from those things. It's something that's natural, and it's not something that we should be like, oh, that's a flaw. You should never feel fear, in a sense that you should never be able to identify danger. So going from those irrational, silly fears about these Power Ranger monsters that are going to get me as I get into my late teen phase, around the area where I'm getting ready to finish up high school, start college, the fears are still silly, but they're a little more rational. Like in hindsight, you can be like, oh, you was tripping. But at the time, like, it made sense why that is what I'm afraid of. My biggest fear at 17, and it's what was conditioned. It's what was the topic of conversation. But the biggest fear, the biggest thing that everyone said, you cannot let this happen, is dying a virgin. And especially as a male, at the lunch table, barbershop, no matter where I'm at, like everything revolved around sex. So it's like, I'm the only person who hasn't experienced this. I don't want to not experience this. And that's why I think so many people are rushing or were rushing to lose their virginity, because if people found out that she was a virgin, especially in my mind, going into college, they like, oh, you don't know what you're doing? On the women's side, on the dude side, it's like, oh, this dude's a loser. Wasn't really the case, but based off of the people that I was kicking it with and based off of what I'm seeing on the media, it's like, this is the only thing that matters right now. Now, again, in hindsight, I realized a lot of these niggas was lying. Like, they was lying straight up. It was because they were afraid of people finding out what the truth was. A few other fears that I'll kind of list off when I was around like 17, 18, 19 was a fear of not getting into my college of choice, thinking that I would have to go to like a NKU. No offense if you went there. Actually, you should never go to NKU. Or really any school that wasn't the college that I wanted to go to. But once I'm at that college, one of the biggest fears that I had was going to a party and it getting shot up. It seems like these days, bro, it can happen anywhere, but it felt like it was more likely to happen at a party. And sometimes you can't even enjoy yourself because of that looming fear. Of course, as a black man being pulled over by a cop. And then lastly, which kind of revolves around a lot of things, is a fear of being judged by your peers. And I think that, especially for my generation and the generation, I wouldn't even say generation, people who are a few years younger than me, social media has made that fear of judgment so much worse. Everyone's opinion weighs more on us because we have access to more opinions. Someone can be in this comment section clowning me because of my jacket, and I don't know them, they don't know me, but their opinion can affect me because they can point out things that I may not have noticed, or point out things that may be true. They may not be nice, but it's true. But now I'm afraid that they might say something that makes other people look at something else different about me. And then even exposure to everyone else's, whether success or failures, it unlocks new fears. It unlocks new potential expectations of where you should be or what could happen if you decide to either chase a dream, decide to either start content, decide to either just post a picture of yourself. Seeing how people get cooked. People lose sponsorships. People lose a lot of things. They may lose respect, lose their family because of something that's posted. So it's like you just never know. So when it comes down to fear, like, it's almost magnified because of social media and the internet. Especially at that age at 17, right out of high school, it's interesting because that's the first part of your life where there's no structure that's predetermined. Like in elementary school, you know you're working to go to middle school. Middle school, you know you're working to go to high school. In high school, you know you're working to graduate. Like, you know that this is the end goal. But right out of high school, there's so many different paths, so many different avenues that isn't one way, or should be one way. People get into trades, people go to college, people go straight into the workforce. So knowing that there's no structure, that expectation of what people can have on you, or that idea of someone else is further ahead of me, or that idea of what if my future doesn't pan out the way that I want it to be, it's strenuous and it's straining, and it can almost paralyze you. Especially if you go to college, like, you're almost delaying that kind of expectation of what's happening after college. Again, I think I've said it in previous videos, but when I was graduating college, like those last few months, last semester or two, it wasn't like, how's college going? It's, do you have anything lined up after? And it's always focused on next. And all these people are asking the questions, maybe with the best interest in mind and your best interest at their heart, but it's still in the back of your mind, like it just builds up. Like, they're asking me this because I should probably have something by now. Whether true or not, it still plays a part into your psyche. Jumping now to age 24, when thinking about the fears and knowing that this is all present day and I can't look at what's going on in hindsight, I can only look at what's going on in current day. And it was a little bit silly to see like all those monsters and Power Rangers that I'm afraid of. But right now, the monsters, they aren't fictional. Like, these monsters are real people. These are monsters that are in Congress. These are monsters with power. These people that are rich, these people that are billionaires, who are so money hungry and greedy that it's affecting everybody else. Like, we're supposed to be the richest country, but everybody's poor and they're using that as a weapon. Different headlines, different things that you see in the news. It makes you question yourself. It makes you question the future. And even like for myself, I'm seeing that everybody is not getting jobs right out of college, or they're getting laid off because of AI. So it's like, if I can't get another job, am I going to be stuck where I'm at? Or if everybody else is getting laid off, what does that mean for me? Or even like crime, because everybody else doesn't have access to income because of all of these layoffs, all of this stuff going on in the workforce. People they're going to start getting it how they can, like robbing, looting, digital crimes. I saw a video about how people's grandparents are getting scammed out of $300,000. People are resorting to this, hopefully. I know some people are just evil, but that wouldn't even cross your mind if you're able to. It still might. People be evil. But hopefully it doesn't cross your mind if you have the ability to get your own way of living in a livable wage. So it's like, with all this crime going on, do I need to make sure I'm prepared myself for somebody trying to run up in the crib? And even housing, the headlines, everything that I see is my generation will never be able to afford a home. So I'm like, will it ever be enough? Is any amount of money ever enough? Not only for the greedy rich, but also for myself in order to achieve these goals. More recently, I decided to kind of take a break from social media. Social media, I mean just Instagram. I still be on TikTok. And in my mind, it's like I'm seeing all this stuff going on, but the difference between like when I was a kid and people were trying to get me to avoid watching these shows, really anything that was gonna scare me, there's no way to necessarily avoid this, like, because it's a reality. It's what is being lived out. The SNAP benefits being cut, people not being able to afford groceries, these layoffs. This is stuff that I'm seeing in real life. I went to Walmart the other day to get a few things, a few groceries, and people are literally stocking up 50, 60 cups of ramen noodles right before these benefits run out, or right before food stamps run out. Just things that I thought I would be able to avoid if I'm not watching the news or if I'm straying away from CNN. It's like, these are things that I'm noticing, and these are things that I know people who got laid off. I know people who are losing their jobs because of what's going on. I sat back and I wasn't really thinking about making a video, but it's almost needed because everything that people are saying is so fear focused. It's time to get to the root of it. And again, the same way that anger is never the main emotion, it's a root of something else. I think fear isn't the end result that people want, the people who are being greedy, but the end result that people want is hatred, which is opposite of love. So fear is a weapon that is being used in order to evoke hate to others, to your neighbor, to politicians, really anybody who you feel like is against you getting in the way. So it's like, you can't let fear enter, or else hatred is soon to follow. And I want to talk about the weapon of fear. So this isn't like a time where I'm like, you need to be fake positive, you need to be delusional, and everything's gonna be all right. It is, but not in the sense of you can't recognize and still stay informed of what's going on. With a lot of things that I've experienced, most of the fears that I'm coming across, I wouldn't say that it's irrational. I wouldn't say that it's unbelief, but the best way that I've been able to combat fear is to look at what's happened historically. A lot of fears that I've had, it's all hypotheticals. Like, what if this happens? What if I get laid off? Or what if somebody tries to rob me? So these are all hypotheticals of what can happen. But historically, when I look at my life, like, not has this happened to other people, but has this happened to me? Has this happened to people that I've known? And if it has happened, were they okay in the end? Because you know that the pain or whatever you're facing isn't the end result. Ecclesiastes talks about how there's nothing new under the sun. So everything that you're experiencing, or everything that you've gone through, everything that you're currently going through, it's not that unique. And that's kind of a sting, like dang, I'm not the only person going through this. And for me, that's been helpful to know that the pain or the situation that I'm going through or the things that I'm afraid of, it isn't unique to me. That kind of takes some of the power out of it. So you know that there is a blueprint out there in order to, I wouldn't say get around it, but get through it. Like the only way sometimes is through. And of course, I always rely on the word. So a few examples of when I'm thinking about people who've gone through fearful situations or people who have used fear as a weapon. How did it end? When you look at Joseph, him being able to basically come up in a drought and all of these fear tactics that was used throughout his life, we know that he was able to be sold into slavery, but all of that had to happen in order for him to make sure that he's providing for his family. Moses, when he's leading the Israelites out of Egypt into the promised land, he's got the Red Sea in front of him and he's got Pharaoh and his army behind him. God still makes a way. And if I'm an Israelite and if I'm Moses, I'm scared, because it's like, not only am I seeing something that is out of the ordinary, like we're getting chased by an army, but there's this huge plot of water or the sea in front of us, but I have to see God do something that hasn't been done before at that point, at least that I'm aware of. But you know that he's come through. Daniel in the lion's den, they were using fear, like if you don't pray to this king, if you don't pray to who we're telling you to pray to, you're getting thrown into the lion's den. And if fear would have had its way, or these expectations of what's going to happen if I don't agree with, or I don't go the way that people are telling me to go, I'm going to be thrown into the lion's den and eaten. But we see that the opposite happens. He's still thrown into the lion's den, but he isn't eaten. He's provided for throughout the night. Even the disciples, when Christ was crucified, knowing that you've been following this man, or you've been following the Messiah for 3 years, and to see him dead or murdered, it's not necessarily easy to not be afraid that this is going to happen to you. But first glance, the past 3 years, what's really been going on? We see it with Peter. He denied Jesus 3 times because he saw that Jesus was getting beat. He was afraid for his own life. But knowing that not only did Jesus go through it and was raised from the dead, but also we have the same fate. Like if you're a follower of the Most High. And then finally, my favorite is the 3 Hebrew boys, knowing that they were threatened with being thrown into the furnace, and they still had that trust that if you look at what's going on, we should be afraid of these consequences, but we still trust God no matter which way it ends up, knowing that we can be thrown into this fiery furnace and not be delivered. That doesn't change the fact that God is who God is. And we see that not only were they thrown into the fire, but they weren't touched, and they weren't burned. And when they came out, they didn't smell like smoke. So to think that, looking at all these examples in the Bible and seeing that these people have gone through all of this hardship, gone through all of this pain, or have to face fears, and a lot of times fear death, it's almost nonsensical for us to think that we won't have to go through some kind of suffering or have to face some kind of fear. But are you letting this control you? Are you letting this guide the way that you're moving? Knowing that the same fear weapons were used on these people, but the same provision that God used on the same people is on us. So as I close out, and when I think about fear, and as I collect my thoughts in these uncertain times, I think about 2 Timothy, where it talks about God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And my next challenge to y'all is, whenever fear shows up, just ask yourself, where is this coming from? Because it shows in the word that God has not given us a spirit of fear. So it's like, where is this coming from? It can be your own thoughts. It can be from the news. It can be from a friend or a family member who is projecting their fear on you. So really being able to address that this isn't coming from God, and it may be coming from somebody else, and really seeing what the root is, you can replace it with the fact that we have power, with the fact that love and not hatred is what's going to win, and the fact that we have a sound mind. So we have the ability to keep going and look at fear and judge it accurately and sense danger, but still judge God accurately and judge what he's able to do accurately and judge his character accurately. So knowing that no matter what the situation is, we'll still be able to pull through. So again, that's pretty much all I had. Just want to keep it short. And people have been telling me I need to get better about telling people to like the video, subscribe, share. Especially since I'm not on Instagram right now, I'm not gonna be able to promote it like I would have liked to. But we still here, and yeah, that's all I got. Y'all boys be easy.